We're live.
Morning. How's everybody today?
You football fans.
I am Queen Roxanne at FQueenRoxanne on Twitter. We have Jeff joining us this morning, Gridiron Ratings founder. We have the IDP tipster Gary, and we have our regular James. How's everybody this morning?
Doing good.
Good.
Good to hear.
Great.
Good to hear.
Hanging in there, mainlining some caffeine right now.
Me too.
Yep. Y'all excited about this draft?
You know I am.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Taking the day off of work.
Contain yourself, James. Settle down, James.
James looks tired.
I'm wide awake. What are you talking about?
Are you? All right.
A little bit.
Right.
It's early over there on the West Coast to be up. We appreciate it, man.
Of course, got to be here. Got to talk.
Yep,
First,
yep.
we're going to talk with Jeff for a few minutes. He is going to tell us about a very exciting project he has been working hard on for quite a while now. This is the unofficial launch of it, and I'll let you explain it.
Well, it's something we've all been working really hard on. Everyone at the Gridiron Ratings team has had a hand in this thing on some level, and that is our 2021 Fantasy Football Draft Guide. So this is kind of the first, official statement we're making about it. We expect to have a beta launch ready some point before the end of the month, and to have an official launch ready shortly after the NFL draft. This is going to be one of the first draft guides. It's not only going to have full IDP and offense, but it's going to be
Finally.
IDP, man. IDP.
But it's going to be launched in a digital magazine format that's going to have multiple updates throughout the summer leading up to week one. Now, what does that mean? A lot of folks do updates. You got the footballers do their updates and PFF does theirs. What we're going to be doing with our updates is anytime there's a situational change, it changes our projections. It's going to change the draft guide. So there's going to be downloadable updates. We're going to have periodic emails letting you know changes have happened. Download your update. We're also going to have links built into it for videos like, hey, getting defensive. Today, we happen to be talking about the AFC North. Maybe there's some useful information here that's going to help you in that draft guide. So you would have a video link to this show right in the draft guide. So when you're looking at it on mobile, on your tablet, your laptop, whatever, you can click a little button icon. It takes you right to the video. It can take you right to a written article on the site. It can take you right to a ratings page, whatever the applicable associated data might be to help you make educated decisions on draft day. So very, very excited about it. It's been a labor of love, to say the least. This has been something where we've been actively working on this since what, Gary? Probably January, February, really hard at it.
Yeah, I'd say so. I was really excited when you first, brought up the whole thing. I mean, this was your brainchild. And to know that we're going to be doing, it's including IDP. We'll talk about some dirty O2, but at the same time, the IDP, a draft guide, and knowing as in depth of we're not just talking the top 50 players. We're talking the whole package here. It might be a fluid situation over the next few months or something. I'm stoked, man. I'm stoked. I hope I know it's going to help a lot of people. I know what kind of information we're putting in there. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see this happening.
I'm excited to use it.
There's going to be some other little pieces too to keep in mind. So for anybody who's viewing right now, as you start seeing the social media hype start to build around this thing, we start talking about it more. When you see that first launch in May, you may only see, 250, 300 defensive players in it, and you may only have 250 or so offensive players. As the moods change and injuries happen and more players start becoming relevant through the summer, we're going to be adding players throughout the summer also. So just because we have 600-700 players or whatever that number is at the official first launch, doesn't mean it doesn't grow by another 100 players over the summer.
Right. All right.
I'm
glad you pointed that out. Yeah, it's a very fluid situation, with just like the off season is.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yep. So we want to stick with, at the initial launch, we want to stick with kind of the most relevant players, start laying the foundation for your homework as you get ready for all of your drafts, have some rookies already in play for your spring and summer drafts that are rookie specific. And then as draft season really kicks off in July, You'll have a stack of updates already in play for the draft guide. You're already going to have the latest, most comprehensive plan right in front of you. And not just having, oh, it's a draft guide with a bunch of rankings and this and that. We tell you specifically how to value these players position against position, where to draft them. And if you're going to skip this player at this pick, who the next guy you should be targeting is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a draft guide. It's like a draft plan. It kind of gives you a full blueprint of what to do. And it's our first go of it. We hope to hit as close to the pin as humanly possible. And for those of you that are listening, I hope that you pick it up. I hope that you take a look, and we'll be dying to get your feedback. So definitely DM us and let us know.
Yep. Hey, real quick here before we move on, Jeff, unless you got something else you want to finish up on there. I just want to urge everybody, hey, we're on YouTube now at the Gridiron Ratings Fantasy Football. Go subscribe. We got fluctuation going with Twitter and everything else, but, we're going to be on YouTube. So go hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it here on Twitter, if you're catching this, you want, follow Getting Defensive, Gridiron Ratings, and everybody's handles are right here on the screen. So I'll just wanted to mention that. Appreciate it if you would.
Absolutely. Good point. Any more on that, Jeff?
Not currently. We've got some other projects in the works too, like doing some comparative player profiles and things like that. And we'll have some more data on that.
It just keeps flowing. It keeps flowing.
Look, I had to do a spray tan this morning, so I haven't been out of the lab since,
right.
over a year. And it's not just COVID. It's a warm glow of my computer screen is, I think, maybe, looking at the number of the living.
Yeah. Roxanne didn't catch it. I used that opportunity to go ahead. We got to save a little bit, man. You're going to be back on, I hope, the 23rd. We can talk a little bit more about updating and stuff. But then Roxanne opened that can of worms again and asked you, is there anything else? Jeff's like, yeah.
And I'm like, is there anything else? And I'm like, actually,
right.
There's like 5 other anything else's, but
there might be some extra stuff too beyond all of that.
We're have a whole 5 episodes about this.
Yeah, we've got all kinds of stuff coming down the pipe. The next 2 to 3 years are going to be very, very exciting. We're looking to add all kinds of specialty content and specialty tools and things that help provide not just a plan to help you draft and help you add and trade and do whatever you need to do to your roster, but it's going to provide context. Right. If there's one thing that makes me nuts and one thing that actually sparked Gridiron Ratings as a whole, it was the idea that rating, or just the rankings rather, they're so arbitrary a lot of times, and there's not enough context and not enough science that goes into them more times than not, that we wanted to give you something a little bit different, something a little bit more detailed, and all of our tools are going to be, achieving that end.
Right.
Yep.
Going deeper. That's what we're doing.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's start with the AFC North is going to be our first discussion of the week. We're going to start with the Steelers. And I guess we start with their number 1 player.
Let's give James a break here, or James a chance here, and Jeff a break.
Take a break, James. Calm down.
Just giving you shit, Jeff. Hey, man, I love what we got going on, but let's talk some IDP real quick.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, the Steelers quietly have an elite player at every single position. You've got TJ Watt, so long as he qualifies at D line. He's a top 3 asset when it comes to dynasty and redraft. He's an absolute stud, especially if you play in any type of leagues that highly value getting to the quarterback. He adds to that value. He's the rare outside edge rusher who, even in tackle heavy leagues, plays heavily. And I just absolutely love him. He's entering the prime of his career. He's on a defense that is probably the greatest linebacking defense in the history of the NFL. And he's just going to keep on chugging. I know Jeff's over there going, probably the Bears are a little bit better, but I'm an AFC North guy, and I absolutely love TJ Watt. When you head back into the traditional linebacking core, I also absolutely love Devin Bush. He's another top 5 asset to me. I know a lot of people are a little bit more hesitant, especially coming off of injury, but I just absolutely love Devin Bush. I think he's going to slot back in and be an absolute star just like TJ Watt. And then in the DB core, you've got Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's doing the exact same thing.
Amazing.
They're my only team that exists that has 3 top 5 guys all across all 3 standard IDP positions. And all 3 of them are absolute studs in the prime of their careers who are going to be great. Bush is the only one with the injury question mark, but I think he's going to overcome that very easily. And the Steelers, while they don't have an absolute plethora of depth, they're so top heavy. They're one of the best teams out there, and they're kind of like this entire division. There's just a lot of talent, and you want to get that on your roster.
Next up, Jeff, what you got for us, man?
Well, it's hard to follow that because James covered a lot of ground. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the only thing that I would disagree with is having one of the all-time great linebacker units out there. I'm thinking the late 80s Giants might have something to say about that with LT. And, there were some pretty great units out there as you kind of go back through time. Heck, even the, 2012 Seattle Seahawks unit might have something to say about that. But TJ Watt, absolutely an elite player. If you're getting him as a D lineman, if you're playing on sleeper and he's dual coded as D line linebacker, elite asset, top 3 for sure. You're talking about a guy who has a pressure rate that runs near 5%. So when he's on the field, he's getting after the quarterback, and that ends up being the number 2. If he's out of linebackers, it's number 2 in the league. Only Matt Judon had a higher pressure rate of all linebackers, and he's in the top 10% of all defensive linemen. So those are elite figures, and it's predictive for sacks. It's obviously he gets a ton of sacks too. You got to love TJ Watt. We'll stop beating that dead horse though. No. Devin Bush is the guy worth talking about. He's going to get undervalued in drafts. It's going to happen. Coming off the ACL, he's not top of mind. Generally considered the second fiddle right now in that defense from an IDP standpoint. Let's be honest with ourselves. The Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to be what they have been. I don't expect them to be, an elite team by any measure. I'm looking for an 8 to 9 win team this year, which means a lot more teams running against them. And if Devin Bush is on the field, it's going to be more tackle opportunity for him, and it's probably going to be a lot less sack opportunity for TJ Watt. Now, I'm not saying sell TJ Watt. You keep TJ Watt. But if you've got a shot to draft Devin Bush as like your second or third linebacker, I think you're getting a steal because he's got linebacker 1 upside. He's got the athleticism. Even coming off the ACL, I think he's going to be fine. It was a clean tear. It sounds like the surgery went well. Rehab's going well. Nothing to be afraid of there. You're talking about a guy who's only, I think he's 22 years old right now. It'll be his age 23 season. So super young dude. I expect him to be a monster for years to come, especially if you're grabbing him in Dynasty.
So I'm totally opposite. We just last week did my just a few days ago, did my fade, shades, trades, and upgrades in inside linebacker. And unfortunately for Devin Bush, for me, I'm concerned with a few things to where I'm making sure where I categorize. He was a shade for me. I'm not going to draft him anywhere any this year. If I have a redraft or a startup or something, I don't like how he was used his rookie season. He fluctuated so much in different games and his snap count and his production. I think we looked at it. He only averaged last year or over his career about 6 tackles a game. And, that's over the year. He had some really down games too. So that's not really an elite showing to me. I don't like the injury. I know he's coming back. I'm wondering if it might be a little bit of hesitation behind that so he didn't get hurt again because he is a young player. But I'm not all in on Devin Bush, and I'm shading him in drafts. I'm going to avoid him. I want to see more. What's really disturbing is after he got hurt, is Spielman and Avery Williamson were able to come in and get 10 tackles, 11 tackles a game on a pretty consistent basis last year. And that was something that Bush has not been able to do at that position, which prior to that, we've seen the great linebackers just eat in that middle of that defense. So I'm a little bit skeptical about Devin Bush myself. And in IDP leagues, I'm going to shade on him. I'm not ditching him, but I'm not reaching for him either.
I would say.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I would say definitely
no.
when you think about the 2019 season and his rookie year, gauging a rookie linebacker on that production can be kind of a hit and miss game because he's still ascending as a player. He's still trying to figure it out, right? And that 2019 Steelers team was pretty good. So teams were throwing late. It wasn't a position where he had a lot of tackle upside. This past year's Steelers team, everyone was running on them. You could run right through them.
Yep.
So where Swain was getting 10 tackles a game, third and fourth quarter, the Steelers were behind or in an even game script. It was a very different situation than the 2019 team where Bush is having to drop into coverage. He's getting pulled off the field as a rookie because he didn't fully comprehend all the zone schemes yet, like a rookie linebacker would. We saw that with Patrick Queen last year, and he's still an elite
Kenneth
talent.
Murray was a killer last year in that too. Go ahead.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yes, but and that's not everybody, right? So a typical rookie linebacker won't be on the field sub. Isaiah Simmons struggled with it. Patrick Queen struggled with it. Devin Bush obviously struggled with it.
COVID year really had a lot to do with it.
Right.
For last year. I'm just, when I see Devin Bush, it's like we had the IDP incentive draft, and he went like the 8th overall linebacker off the board. And I understand it's a keeper league that it's going to be an ongoing league. So this person's kind of thinking about that probably when they draft. But to me, he's nothing. He needs to prove himself. He's been in the league. He showed his rookie season, but at the same time, why were they using him that way? And then he didn't start out last year. I think his first game, he started out pretty strong. After that, he dropped off. I can't buy. I'm not going to spend a 8th overall value in a draft. I'm not going to pay that to get him. That's just too much. It's too high. He's got to show me something personally.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. Now, if he's the number 8 linebacker off the board, that's a little high for me. And I don't know how you guys otherwise feel about that. I'm looking at him as like linebacker 14 or 15 at this juncture, which
it may be a linebacker 2 area, not the top 10, not the top 10. That's crazy.
2.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying. He's a linebacker 2 with linebacker 1 upside. You're drafting the upside. Like last year with Fred Warner, right? People were drafting him as a linebacker 2, and then he delivered an all-pro season. Devin Bush has that same ability, but I wouldn't be spending the capital right now. I'd be trying to go grab those other more elite players. When you think about the dearth of defensive linemen and defensive backs and all the linebackers out there, Bush could easily be drafted as a linebacker 2 or should be. That guy taking him as the 8th linebacker, probably a Steelers fan.
What about you, James? You rank. Hey, people, if you have not followed James on Twitter, this is a ranking fool. This guy ranks, and he ranks well. And as a matter of fact, it ranks so well that, now I'm not a big ranker. I usually don't go anywhere near as deep as James does. And I mean, that's the first thing that caught my eye. And that's why I reached out to James and tried to bring him on to Getting Defensive and now I'm really happy to see him as one of the regular crew. But either way, when people ask me now, for my rankings, I refer them to James. If you're looking for some rankings, man, I've looked it over, and I mean, let's face it, rankings are nothing but an opinion, and it's all splitting hairs, especially when you're talking in that top 10, 15 and such. So, maybe I wouldn't have it exactly like James, but I used James as I referred to it when we were doing our IDP incentive Gridiron Ratings League recently. I just, it's just general information. I'm not perfect. It's just what's going on, and I trust what James has in his ranking. So I just wanted to mention that. But James, where are you taking Devin Bush? What kind of value to put on him?
I was going to say I've got him higher than you guys. I think he's a true linebacker 1. I understand that the injury concern and the lack of pure production in his rookie year leads to hesitation. And I also understand that more often than not, young players get overdrafted in Dynasty. People look at the age and they go, oh, I want to have this guy for a decade. And 1, their league might not be around for a decade. And 2, he might not produce for a decade.
Right.
So I completely understand that. I bake that into a lot of my rankings. And frankly, I think often the young players do get overdrafted, but I don't think that's the case with Devin Bush. I think exactly what Jeff said. He's going to have more tackle opportunities. His turnover opportunities are going to remain the same. He's always been very skilled there. He's one of the best young linebackers probably in the entire league at just creating turnovers. Yeah, he hasn't been on the field that much. Yes, there's injury concerns, but I don't think that's enough to deter me. I think he's a top 5 linebacker. I understand that that's a big, heavy take, not a typical take, not a take that a lot of people have. But I'm all in on Devin Bush. I'm going to be drafting him pretty much in every league I'm in because I'm higher on him than pretty much everyone else. And I'm totally okay with that. I think that he's just going to be an absolute star whose floor is so high so long as he remains healthy that there's no reason to not put him on your roster. And I know I keep mentioning his health, but his injury risk is no higher than anyone else in the league. I don't think that there's a secondary ACL issue that we don't know about that, it happens to every player. No, it doesn't. You don't see guys get re-injured more often than not. You only have like Thomas Davis, and that's a one-of-a-kind person. So
I think it's a trend. The re-injury was more of an 80s and 90s trend. The medical field, they're doing so much better to make sure these guys don't get injured. So I guess my point of view was more of coming back with hesitation because of injury, not at 100%. You're talking to a guy, I've had reconstructive surgery on my knee, but it was back in the 80s, and I just, back then it took 3 or 4 years for guys to really get over that if they made it. And I still think, it's great to get these guys back on the field within a year or around a year, but they're still just, it's hesitation. And I'm hesitating to go with Bush. And I don't mean to change the subject, but we're really staying on the Pittsburgh. What I wanted to mention is, they released Vince Williams, and right now they're talking about Spielin, which is a guy that replaced Bush last year. They're talking about him taking over at that so-called inside linebacker spot that Vince Williams played. Now, Vince Williams has been there for a long time. As IDP asset, he was really nothing, even with injuries. He couldn't stay consistent. He had maybe a good season or two to where I could say he was hitting or getting close to linebacker 1 type numbers. But how do we feel about Spielin? He graded well last year. If he is used in this kind of it's kind of weird because it was kind of like he was up on the line, Vince Williams. Are they going to use Spielin up there? Is he going to be rushing a lot more? Are we thinking that if he can succeed, is he a linebacker too? Is this possible?
It's a good question, actually.
I'm going to pass on him. This is going to be a situation where the Pittsburgh defense, from an IDP standpoint, it's going to revolve around Watt. It's going to revolve around Bush. Depending on your format, maybe you get a little bit of love for Hayward, maybe you get some love for Fitzpatrick. That's about it. There's, with no more Mike Hilton there, like it'll depend on who replaces him. There could be some corner value there if your league plays that way. But I'm not worried about Robert Spillane. I look at him as a player that he was a nice fill-in, and he benefited from a prime situation. He fell into a role where he just teams were targeting him. Let's be clear. He was flanking that group, so teams were actively scheming their run game and actively scheming their pass game to go right at him, and he delivered. He proved to be a reliable tackler. He was, he picked up a couple turnovers. He's a decent player, but he's not a game changer. He's not somebody we should be overly stressed about for IDP.
And as we know, production by default does count in IDP. What do you got, James? What do you think about Spielin?
I agree with Jeff. It's essentially the same thing. He's someone who got targeted and produced because he was getting targeted, which is nice. But at the same time, when that defense is fully healthy, I don't see him as anything more than maybe a spot start against a super weak offensive line or against a super strong run team where you think you're going to get tackles. He's someone who's not just on my radar because I just don't think that when they're healthy, he's going to get the volume you need.
Yeah, his real value would be just like handcuffing a running back, handcuff him for Bush in case something does go wrong. So the last guy I wanted to bring up, besides mentioning their cornerbacks, they need to get some drafting done. They need to address this in the draft. They didn't do anything in the free agency. I think they really, if they have somewhere to really improve at, will be the cornerbacks. And I imagine we just might actually see that this year in the first couple of rounds. Maybe they'll do take somebody that, of course, I'm not a big rookie guy, but hopefully they get some help in that secondary. Bud Dupree, in the past, he has been borderline linebacker 2, low DL1, depends how big your rankings are. Dupree has had some time. He was the edge rusher opposite of TJ Watt for the last couple of years. He's moved on to Tennessee. When he got hurt last year, they apparently, from what I understand, they intended on drafting this guy. What's his name? Heisman? What's his name?
Alex Highsmith?
Highsmith?
Yeah, Alex Highsmith. So they actually drafted him in the 3rd round last year with the intentions of actually, this is what I'm reading, that they were going to let Dupree go, knowing that Dupree was going to need to get paid somewhere because, he was worth it. And that they suspect that Highsmith is going to step right in and have no problems other than, being young, he's got to grow a little bit. I'm not convinced. I don't think he flashed enough last year. And the reason I'm mentioning this for IDP purposes, if I'm looking at him and looking at what Dupree was able to do over the last few years there at that position on the strong side, rush side, I'm not expecting that of Highsmith. Highsmith right now, I'm going to grab late when you're in those last 5 rounds or something, if I'm thinking about depth. And I'm certainly not looking at him as a linebacker, designated linebacker in lineups either. He would have to be an edge rusher, or maybe like in sleeper, be designated a DL or something because he is off the edge. How do you guys feel about him?
I mean, I like him. I think they like the skill set in Pittsburgh, but you're like the way you're talking about drafting him is pulling him up late, right? He's going to be a free square, and I don't mind grabbing him and stashing him in a deeper league. Depending on how deep your rosters go, if you're running, edge specific positions, if he has a D-line designation, if you can get those points and you benefit from, say, getting pressure on the quarterback, more sacks, 6-point sack leagues, for example. That's probably a guy that I want to go after and just stick him on the bottom of the bench and see what happens. But that's probably the extent of it.
Yeah. Anything, James?
Again, I feel like I'm agreeing with Jeff. The Steelers team is only an 8 or 9 win team at best, which means you're only going to get so much pass rushing production. And we know TJ Watt's going to do it. And we know, Cam Hayward's in there.
Tuitt, Hayward. There's a
right.
lot.
There's enough pass rush that I don't think Alex Highsmith is going to give you any sort of consistency. Of course, injuries happen, and if injuries do happen, he's the guy I'm looking to step in and give you that pass rush consistency. Right. But to start, right now during the offseason when everyone's healthy, everyone looks good, he's just not that invest worthy for me. I do think the one upside he has is I don't expect Pittsburgh to invest at all at linebacker or at D-line in the draft. Maybe a day 3 pick late, but they have a lot of holes elsewhere on that roster, which means Highsmith's very likely to stick in his role. They're not going to give him any real competition. So he is a safe bet to be a lottery ticket, but he's just that, a lottery ticket. And with as much pass rushing as they have elsewhere, he's someone who I'm just kind of not that interested in, to be frank.
Yeah, across that front 7, when you're looking at that line, there's only so much IDP meat on the bone to be had, and he's definitely, he's got to be behind Tuitt, Hayward, and Watt at this point. So, and then I can't remember his name. Also, even their nose tackle dude, he's a tough character too. He gets his Tyson Alula.
Yeah, Alu.
Yeah, Alu. Anyways, all right. So I think we've covered the Steelers pretty good. What do you think, Roxanne?
I think that was great. I want to move on to Cleveland because I know James can talk some Browns defense for it.
Right. We just hit him up not too long ago, but we'll cover him a little more.
Right.
Yeah, I mean the Browns are my home team, so there's definitely a hint of bias with my rankings. But Myles Garrett's an absolute stud. He should be the number one defensive lineman. Yes, ahead of Chase Young. I understand that Chase Young is a little bit younger, tied to a defense that has so much sexiness and upside with Washington that everyone loves them. But you have to remember how amazing Myles Garrett was in the first half of the season before he got COVID. He was the best player on a league in terms of just value over your replacement players. He sacked people left and right, and if you're even in a non-heavy sack-pointed league, he was getting it done, and he's going to keep getting it done. He's an absolute star. He's my number one guy, and simply, he's excellent.
What do you think about them adding Tacky? What are you expecting out of that?
I'm expecting a lot of solid weak side rushing. Olivier Vernon was very quietly good last year. He put up one absolutely monster game. And then in the back half of the season, he really produced when Myles Garrett was struggling from his COVID recovery. And I think McKinley's going to give you the same type of numbers. He's not going to just turn into an absolute star overnight. But when you're the guy on the weak side rushing after having someone like Myles Garrett on the other side of you, you're going to get your opportunities. And Cleveland's going to be ahead in games. There's going to be late game pass rushing opportunities, and McKinley's going to get some of that production. So I like him a lot as a secondary rusher. He's nowhere close to a D-line 1 status, but as someone who you're targeting late who doesn't really have any name value, he's someone who's up there. We've talked about Anthony Walker before. I absolutely love him in Cleveland's defense.
Mm-hmm.
He fits in perfectly as just a tackle monster. He's that heir to Andre Davis and Joe Schobert, like I've said before. And then when you look at the secondary on this team, it's unbelievable.
Yes, it is.
So good. You've got John Johnson, who a lot of players know from his time over in Los Angeles, who now is going to come in and take that exact production from LA to Cleveland. You got Denzel Ward, who's going to be an absolute machine outside. You got Grant Delpit, who I think a lot of people are sleeping on because he was injured last year, and I absolutely love him this year. No one's going to be thinking about him. They all remember Ronnie Harrison. They're going to see Troy Hill. They're going to see Greedy Williams, and Grant Delpit's just going to be like, oh, he'll be situational. I don't think that's the case. I think he's going to be
You hit Jeff's buzzer there. Jeff's ready now.
I think he's going to be a strong safety play, a strong guy to be drafting, and he's just going to be creeping up draft boards all offseason long. And if you want to get in on somebody whose value is just going to rise, he's your guy. You might not even like him. You might not even need him, but get him on your team, and then you can ship him out before the start of the season at a profit.
Roll, Jeff.
Man, you hit me right in the warm and fuzzies with the Grant Delpit thing. So I had a first-round grade on him when he came out. And then, of course, he had the devastating Achilles injury. We expect him to recover, obviously. All of our analysis is based on the idea that he recovers. But you want to talk about a Swiss Army knife, a 22-year-old kid who can play all of the positions. He can play safety, he can play corner, he can step up and play linebacker despite his size. He's a tackling machine. He's a ball hawk. He does it all. Very few defensive backs that come out of college can do all of it. Isaiah Simmons was kind of one of those guys last year, maybe a little more linebacker than DB, but Delpit's more DB than linebacker. If we see the Browns come out in the 3 safety sets like we're expect Delpit to be on the field and to be productive. I would expect a low snap count, but a high productivity based on those snaps. So something you'll see from our draft guide and moving forward on gridironratings.com is going to be a splash score. The splash score is just how often he's making a play based on when he's on the field. And I expect him to be one of those guys where super low snap count, but I expect that splash score to be through the roof. So he'll still be useful despite lower usage. Loved what you said about Myles Garrett. I have him. He's kind of that. He's got to be number one, right? How do you not have him number one when he gets matchups against the Bengals?
I don't understand how everybody has completely forgot about a dude named Hunter. What happened to Daniel Hunter? That dude is a beast, man. And I'm not taking away from Myles Garrett.
Well,
he was.
Bad neck injury he had last year. And neck and back injuries are scary for D linemen.
Well, okay, but we're not talking now. I understand that we've talked injuries and being worried about injuries in this neck, but if they come back and if he's healthy, I'm sticking him in there number one, just like he was just 2 years ago.
You do that,
and Garrett's going to sit there at second or third. We'll think about it. And don't get me wrong, but those are some really fine hairs. It's just I'm giving the older veteran love to the dude, I guess. But he is definitely.
They're both young players, and they're both hitting their prime right now. But Myles Garrett gets the benefit of 2 games against the Bengals, and nobody on their O-line can block. He gets 2 games against the Ravens. They're tough. Okay, I get it. They get 2 games against the Steelers. That O-line is blown to pieces. They don't know who's playing left tackle right now. When I look at those 4 games against the Steelers, Big Ben can't move anymore. And against the Bengals, their quarterback's coming off a pretty devastating ACL and other damages in his knee. He's going to eat for 4 games in a very serious way. Not to mention the fact that he can go man up on anybody in the league. Right. He's just a different man. Danielle Hunter's a speed rusher. He can get after you. He doesn't bull rush quite as well as Myles Garrett does. Myles Garrett will get after the bull rush. He can beat you with speed. He converts power to speed. He's a very different animal. So to me, guy, number 1, and then I've got probably Chase Young, number 2. Danielle Hunter, if he's fully healthy, might be 3 or 4. But I think it's a matter of our opinions and what we expect, right? So love Garrett. Tack McKinley, this is the best situation the guy's ever been in. Like, let's be clear about what he had in Atlanta. Yeah, he was drafted in the first round, but he was expected to be the guy. But Vic Beasley flamed out on the other side. So basically he ended up seeing, tackle blocking, plus he'd get the tight end chip or a back on him because they could. It was no big deal. Right. Now in Cleveland, you're like, okay, well, we have to shift our entire blocking scheme and we have to shade towards Garrett. We have to double team him. So McKinley's coming off the other side in cushier matchups. I'm not saying he's a 10-sack guy, right? Maybe we're looking at 4 or 5 sacks, but this could be a player where maybe not 2021, but 2022, we're like, you know what? Here's a DL 3 or 4 that's going to be super useful because he's found his groove and now he's comfortable and he's in a good spot.
Right.
You got to love it. 25 years old, high draft capital, cushy situation. These are the kinds of things you draft late because it's a lottery ticket that's got a pretty good shot of winning. It's kind of like a scratch off versus playing the Powerball. Oh. Yeah, it might not be big money, but you're going to win.
Yeah, I'm all on tap. I'm not you. Production by default, we've said it. Yeah, I can see that happening if he can stay on the field because they're just going to run his way to stay the hell away from Garrett's son. But I am not sold on Garrett or on Tack. So being able to stay on the field or play up to par, I think, and I'm not an Oliver fan, but I actually think Oliver's a better player. So, but hey, that's what this is about. If we all thought the same, then there wouldn't be a need for all of us. You got anybody else on there you guys want to cover? If not, I was just going to bring up the weak side linebacker.
Go ahead.
Hit it.
I think overall, when you look at that, like, James really hit on it. That secondary is just stacked. Now, I'm more of a Ronnie Harrison believer than I am the Delpit, but again, it's splitting hairs. But when it comes to the defensive line, if you take Garrett off of that defensive line, what do you have? So I think they're going to be addressing the defensive line a little bit when it comes to a draft, and then at the same time they need to do something to get some more help with Walker in there. I like Philip Jacobs, and I think Philip Jacobs is going into his second year has a good chance to be the guy next to Walker. Whether or not he's playing full a bunch of snaps, I don't know, because also expecting a lot of 3 safety sets with Delpit and John Johnson and Ronnie Harrison. So I don't know if this is really going to amount to shit for the weak side linebacker or not position for IDP. But I could see them. If I could see them taking, another linebacker and another defensive line, probably in the top 4 rounds. I don't know if you guys could feel that or not. I mean, what else are they going to do on offense? I'm not sure what their offensive needs would be where they couldn't go ahead and kind of stack the box a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, they have just a plethora of talent everywhere. They're probably the best suited team in the league to head into this draft, as crazy as it sounds. The Browns just don't really have a glaring need, and I think D line and linebacker is what they can go attack just because they don't need to go attack anything else. It's not like they're awful at those situations, but
Right.
what else are they going to go for? I guess you
Right.
could go grab a receiver. But they're just so stacked that I think you're completely right there. That's why I didn't really mention Jacob Phillips, because I think with the 3 DB set and 3 safety sets out there, he's going to be useful but inconsistent because he's not going to have that snap count that
Right.
you want. And I think if
No.
they bring in another linebacker, which they're likely to do, he's going to fall into just a guy category who, without injuries, isn't going to be that useful.
Oh, all right. Cool.
Well,
Jeff, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, in the draft, and we don't want to talk a ton about offense, but we know Odell's probably, I think he's got 1 year left on that deal, maybe 2, but he's got no more dead money. So I wouldn't be shocked to see them go after a wide receiver, maybe a swing tackle, with Chris Hubbard being the swing tackle right now. I don't know if they're comfortable with that guy in the event of an injury. But on the D line, you have Sheldon Richardson, Malik Jackson are guys that have been sitting there. Andrew Billings. I don't know if they're all back under contract, but they've got some hog mollies sitting in there at those 2 D tackle spots.
Yeah. I think that's the problem is they're big bodies. You know, they do their job well. Don't get me wrong. But for, clogging holes, you know, but I don't see a lot of it coming out for IDP purposes. That's to be fair. Huh?
Yeah. They're not drafting their tackles, but we want them eating blockers to free up Garrett and to free up Tack McKinley and to free up Anthony Walker. That's what those guys do.
They need to hand it on a dish to Tack. They need to go get that sack. They'll need to do that for him.
What about, well, I have a question. What about weak side linebacker Seun Takitaki?
I think he was like a 5th rounder, wasn't he, James? And I just don't think that he's, I know he got injured his first year, and then last year, I mean, that was crap. Other than Goodson for IDP purposes, and Goodson didn't even play 100% of the snaps all the time. Then you have Malcolm Smith back here. There's a retread from the 49ers, former MVP that just, to me, had a good game that game to get that MVP. It's not by his career status, but either way, I'm not sold on him. I don't know. James, you probably have a stronger feeling about him than I do.
I do. I think, you mentioned production by default, and I think that's kind of what Takitaki is. I don't think he's a special talent, but I think he's a good enough talent. And if he's on the field a lot and he's got that high snap count, he's going to be relevant because whoever it is on the field with a high snap count is going to be relevant.
It's last round. You want to pick either him or Phillips. Who you taking to stash on your bench?
I'm taking Phillips. I think he's just got a little bit more upside, and you want to get that variance that late in the draft. If they crash, you cut them. Right. But I think Phillips has just more option to be better.
Right. Okay. Well, what do you think, Roxanne?
I think we should move on if we want to keep our guests before somebody has to leave.
Yep.
So next will be the Bengals, another Cincinnati team.
Cincinnati. Well, we could talk for hours about Cincinnati. I'll start out. We all know about Sam Hubbard. I mentioned a while back. I think people are undervaluing what Sam Hubbard's going to bring to the table this year if he's healthy and as the full-time weak side edge rusher. I seen him slipping down a little bit. I don't see a lot of talk about him. I really like Sam Hubbard to have a chance this year to get into the triple digits. He has a known commodity in the past to be able to even produce decent. He's almost like to me, I think he's kind of a TJ Watt B, a smaller. I think he has that type of potential to reach that kind of realm, because if you look at his combined tackle base, his floor, his ceiling, whatever you want to talk about it's a lot better than a lot of people that are a lot of other edge rushers, and an edge rusher can get noticed for the fact that they get 12 sacks, but then they only have like 30 or 40 combined tackles. where Sam Hubbard has that ability to get that 60 combined tackles and triple digits. So I think people are really undervaluing Sam Hubbard this year. When it comes to any of the linebackers, it's a pot shot just like anywhere else up in Cleveland, kind of what we was talking about. But I'm excited to see what Logan Wilson is going to bring to the game this year. I think if he could get more playing time and they quit messing around, I don't understand what Cincinnati does bringing in Bynes and keeps putting him in there. They need to make up their mind, put Pratt in and Logan Wilson and let them play the damn year. They're rebuilding anyways. It's not like there's no way in hell we're going to see the Cincinnati sniffing the playoffs next year. So, you got a good secondary when it comes to the safeties. I'm not real high on their corners. I suspect that they've got to. The one thing that I don't think they'll be able to do is address any of those defensive needs high in the draft. Coming up, they've got too much other stuff. They need to. I think pretty sure they still need to patch up that offensive line pretty good. So I don't see him. I don't see that defense being any better than what it did last year, but I do expect probably more out of Pratt, Wilson, and Hubbard for sure. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you for the most part. I like Pratt a lot. I'm a little more bullish on Wilson than a lot of people. I think the fact that they had Bynes last year and they wanted to use him at such a high frequency makes me go, I don't know if this team really believes in Wilson and wants to give him those snaps. I understand he's young. I understand it's a COVID year, and that opinion just frankly might be wrong. But I'm not super high on getting Wilson high. Also, I guess when it comes to the secondary, I think it's going to be an awful secondary defensive back-wise. They're not going to be good. Mike Hilton's not going to step up and be a great performer by any means. But at the same time, from a fantasy perspective, that could be a good thing. They're going to get all of their targets. People are going to be passing on them early and often, and they're going to get a few interceptions because they're just going to see that volume. I think that there's someone to target in defensive back leagues where they specifically edge out cornerbacks versus safeties. And I think I like them both, not because I think they're great NFL talents, but because they're victims of circumstance and they're going to get that volume. And they maybe shouldn't be where they are. And I agree with you, Gary, that the Bengals have so many holes throughout their team that I don't know how they're going to address everything in the draft. And I think they're going to go offense first. They're going to protect their Joe Burrow. They're going to go get a linebacker. They might go take a wide receiver, which might not be the smartest thing, but they don't seem to be looking at addressing their defense first and foremost, which is understandable in today's NFL, but it's also not the greatest for Bengal fans who are going to just see a lot of points scored up.
Great point.
I think we're sharing a brain, James. I don't know if you and I need to be on shows together anymore because we just agree too much. So I love Jesse Bates for fantasy. I've loved him for years. The guy is lock him in for 100+ tackles. So if you're in a tackle heavy league, he's a guy you have to have.
He has to be their number one IDP asset.
Absolutely,
easily,
has to be without question. He's his tackle rate when you consider tackles per snap and all that is in the elite category, and it measures up favorably against guys like Budda Baker and some of the other name brand defensive backs that you've seen the last few years. You got to love it. He doesn't give you a ton in terms of turnovers or anything else, but he's a tackling machine, and so is Von Bell. It's almost like the Bengals know full well that their linebackers are awful and terrible, and they need other people to tackle. So
they won't do anything about it. I don't understand it.
I've got
for years now.
I've got a smoking hot take.
All right.
Micah Parsons to the Bengals in the first
round.
round.
That would be sweet.
A hot take.
It doesn't get much spicier than that. It's no one's calling everybody's like Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, but they've got so much tied up right now in terms of draft capital in their offensive line. They've got a bunch of draft capital tied up. I mean, they took T. Higgins in the second round last year. They just paid Tyler Boyd. Like, are they really trying to spend first round money on another wideout?
Right.
You've got Joe Mixon in there at running back. Yeah, you could go get a tight end, but tight ends historically, they have a little bit of lead time for growth. I know Kyle Pitts is a different type of monster here. He's a different dude, and he's a lot more like Vernon Davis. He could step in and be an impact immediately. I get all that. But if you can pop a guy like Micah Parsons in the middle of that defense, it alleviates their Logan Wilson problem, and it gives them.
Where is Cincinnati drafting?
5.
5. So you think that they'll reach at 5 to get Parsons?
Parsons will be off the board in the top 12.
What's that?
Parsons will be off the board in the top 12 picks.
Okay.
But yep, I agree.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
I was just curious. Go ahead. I was wondering.
It's hot. It's super hot. And I know it's super hot. And I'm not even trying to say that that's what, there's just a rationale to do it because they've been so bad at linebacker for so long that they need somebody right there just to help solidify and steady that defense a little bit. Because as long as they're bad at linebacker, they will continue to be that team that sputters between 6-10 and 9-7 for the rest of forever. If you don't have some guys that can go sideline to sideline and you don't have some guys that can handle the second level, you're screwed. You just can't do anything. So it's a fit. I'm sure they go a different direction because, Bengal's going to Bengal, but it's a thought.
Yeah. Let me ask you I'm sorry, what, Roxanne?
I just said that's a great hot take. I actually like it.
So right now, I want to be clear because of something James said. I am not drafting unless it's a late flyer, either one or Pratt or Wilson. It's got to be a late flyer, folks. Don't go. We don't know what they're going to do. The history is saying to us that they're barely linebacker twos. They're bye-week plays and stuff in standard size leagues. So I wanted to make sure that everybody understood I wasn't promoting going and getting Wilson or Pratt. But those are two right now on the roster, the two guys that are probably in the lead to have the most production coming out of Cincinnati's linebacker core. Whether they ever get to full time, if they could both be on the field at full time, then one of them will probably start hitting linebacker 1. But Jeff, who are you taking right now if you had to decide between Pratt and Wilson?
Giant Meteor? No, I'm just kidding. Give me the guy on the weak side. I guess I've got to go Wilson. I don't love it. I'm doing that begrudgingly. Let's be clear. I don't love either of these guys. It's a coin flip. I don't care for either player. I would be more inclined to skip the position completely, and I would go take a guy like Von Bell, who's probably going to go get overlooked, and he'll give you DB1 upside, basically playing linebacker because he's one of their sub backers into the box. But man, I don't know. I'm saying.
You can say pass.
No, I'm not saying pass. I'm saying drafters. Skip the Bengals linebackers. Avoid. Danger.
Want to add anything to that, James?
I agree, except I think if I had a coin flip, I'd go Pratt. But it's the same sort of sentiment of I don't want to be doing this. I better be in a very deep league with very many rosters where I'm stuck doing this.
16 teams, 35 bench, 40 bench.
The only upside you have with Cincinnati is they're going to get scored on a lot. And if they're going to get scored on a lot, it means late in games they're going to get run on a lot, which means there's tackles to be had. I don't think that there's a sucking machine that's going to get all those tackles. I think they're going to kind of get spread around, and it's not going to be very nice.
Sam Hubbard.
I could be wrong there. Yeah, I could be wrong. Someone could steal all those tackles and become that Joe Schobert of Cincinnati. But
that defense is going to be on the field a lot again this year. Burrow hurt, coming off that injury, if he even starts the season out. They've got multiple problems. So the defense is going to be on there, and you're probably right. It's probably going to be like an even glaze of icing across the board. Jesse Bates has got to be your main guy. He's got to be your main target, and he's probably a top. If I was to rank, I'm putting Bates up there in that top 5. I don't know about you fellas, but I think we probably ought to move on. We've got one more team, right, Roxanne?
Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
And Patrick Queen, obviously is Jeff likes Patrick Queen.
Yes. My eyebrows just now.
Your top scorer on that team. What did you want to add? What do you want to say about Patrick Queen? Besides that his name is awesome.
I know that's why you love him.
I should have worn my Patrick Queen jersey today. What
was you thinking?
I don't know.
Gary and I had a lot of conversations about Patrick Queen and Chase Young last season. We were in the run-up to the draft and all that, and I love Patrick Queen. I think he's just a exceptionally talented player. I think he has a lot to learn still, and we saw him get exposed a little bit in coverage last year. And there's a lot more that he can bring to the table. But, man, that upside is absolutely tremendous. If you've got him in Dynasty, you've got yourself a hell of an asset for a long time. But I think the bigger question in Baltimore right now isn't so much Patrick Queen. It's going to be who's coming off the edge. No more Matt. And of linebackers, this is the guy that had the highest pressure rate in the NFL. And that's not just last year. That's over the last 2 years. This guy, Matt Judon.
Oh, yeah. Okay, my bad.
So he's in New England now. He's gone. It looks like potentially Tyus Bowser becoming that guy, but is he as quick? Is he going to be able to provide that same level of pressure?
He hasn't been.
Right.
He's been there a while. He has not been that guy.
So how does that impact the rest of the defense? Is Marlon Humphrey going to get those easy plays in the secondary when quarterbacks are throwing under pressure? Is there going to be anybody getting sacks in Baltimore?
Yeah, and the Ravens are, they're one of every year they're either leading in how many, the most pressure or most blitzing. Sorry, the most blitzing in the league. And that really worked to Judon's benefit and a few of the others. But they like to bring 3 or 4 guys, even from linebacker to the safeties or whatever. They really like to blitz. But Bowser and heading into this year, with Bowser and McPhee, I think it is, on the outside now, that's not going to get the job done. I mean, you got Campbell. I think Roxanne wanted to mention Campbell in there and stuff, but we got Wolf. That might be the best rusher right now, age-wise, if he can stay healthy. He did a good job last year for him. But that edge rushing, I don't know. I think that if they don't address anything in the draft high, I'm certainly thinking they're just planning on overwhelming them with blitz numbers again, and just what are they going to do with Malik Harrison? And now that they re-signed Fort, they saved a little bit of money by cutting Fort, who had just signed a 2-year contract last year. And then they cut his butt. Looked like Malik Harrison was going to get some more playing time this year, and then all of a sudden they do Fort again.
Right.
Yeah, they re-signed him. So where I don't like their defense right now. Patrick Queen and Chuck Clark's about the only 2 guys on there I like. Derek Wolf's okay. But they've got a lot to address, and I think it's got to be edge rusher number 1, just like you. I didn't mean to just rattle on there, Jeff, but I agree.
No, it's good. I think the other guy we need to be thinking about edge rusher wise is Jalen Ferguson, because if they don't address it early in the draft, they're going to have to make a change. Right now, Malik Harrison looks like the number 3 middle backer. Mm-hmm. You could very well consider popping Queen on the outside and using his speed, get him coming off the blitz, and then run Harrison and Fort next to each other in the middle. I don't know if that's really in his skill set. I don't know if we've seen enough of that in terms of the way he can use his hands to fend off blockers, but fun little tidbit, Matthew Judon over the last 2 years led the NFL in non-contested rush rate, meaning he was free runner to the quarterback more frequently than any other edge or linebacker player in the NFL.
And I think you're bringing that up not by Judon's talent so much as the opportunity because of how the Ravens blitz.
Right.
It's just the blitz happy. If you're sending 5 guys, somebody's going to be open.
Yeah.
Judon benefited from that. I think that's a good point. James, what about your former Browns? I mean, how about the Ravens?
Ooh, deep blow. Deep blow.
Yeah.
I'll agree with pretty much everything you said, Gary. This edge rush situation is horrible. I don't believe in Bowser. I don't believe in Ferguson. And I have them taking not 1, not 2, but 3 edge rushers with their first 4 picks in the draft.
Damn.
I think that they know that this is a glaring hole. They haven't addressed it in free agency. They've shored up everywhere else, and they're just going to go and attack. This year in the draft, there's no one who's really that big, giant edge rush guy that everyone wants to go grab. There's a lot of nice guys, but there's no one at the top end. And I think the Ravens are just going to go pile on and take that talent and try and fix their defense, because right now it doesn't look pretty. I don't see any sort of pass rushing skill. Maybe they got the play callers in there, but I don't think that the Tyus Bowser is going to suddenly become a DL1 on us. He's Tyus Bowser. He's fine, but he's not the guy you need to have out there being a star. And like you said, Matthew Judon knew how to get inside and get in there and blitz, but was he putting up great numbers? No, he was putting up good numbers. And his, I guess, pass rush rate to actual production rate was not a good ratio. And I think Baltimore knows that. They let him walk, and they're going to try and get new guys in the draft to fix things. And luckily for them, they don't really have a lot of needs anywhere else. So they're just going to attack edge rush. They're going to get a lot of guys in there, and everyone we're talking about at that position today right now isn't going to be that relevant come week 1, and that's okay. But today, outside of Patrick Queen being a star, Marlon Humphrey being a star, Chuck Clark being a star, they don't have a lot. But what do they need? Just edge rushers.
Right. What do you think about Campbell?
Yeah,
Roxanne?
and why Gary brought this up in our league. We saw that Calais Campbell didn't even get drafted.
Yeah, 30 round, 16 team. Calais Campbell is a free agent after the draft.
Right.
I missed that, or that would have not happened.
Right.
I totally missed it, or it would have not happened. Yeah, I mean, I would have been jumping up and down to get him in the 30th round.
Age would be the only thing holding anybody back. They just see, he's been in the league, 12 years or something now?
Right. Yeah, he's definitely not the elite L or DL1 anymore. He is not that top 5 or 10, but to his credit, he realistically only in the last year or two started losing a step in his 30s, where that starts happening around 29, 30. He's 32, 33, I think, right now. So to his credit, he's really hung in there. Folks, if you don't dismiss this guy just because he's going to be 33 years old. You're at least talking a DL2, and in deeper formats, he's a starter. So I'm shocked. I can't wait to see waiver wires open up in our thing, because I'm probably going to have a claim in real quick because I need defensive line help in that league. But either way, what are you guys thinking about Campbell? Are you going Wolf? Are you in favor of Wolf or Campbell for this season in a redraft?
I don't really like any of them. I think in a redraft, I'll go Campbell. But he's a little bit older than you're saying. He's 35 this year. He's going to hit that age.
I knew he was up there.
Damn.
Yeah, and I think he's got the most talent on the D line in terms of getting to the quarterback, which isn't necessarily a good thing.
Right.
I think he's going to get those sporadic sacks. He's going to be valuable in the sense that he's not going to be a goose egg guy. But I don't really like anyone on this D line. Their whole rushing situation is horrendous. I don't think it's scary to say right now they have the worst pass rush in the league on paper. It looks bad there. And if Campbell gets those 3 edge rushers like I'm predicting, maybe he's going to work a little bit more in the interior, going to get a little bit more action that way. But right now, everyone in this team, Wolf, Campbell, whoever's on that line, I don't really want to touch them. I don't think they're lottery tickets. I think they might be used lottery tickets.
Well, there it is. What do you think, Jeff?
They're 2-week-old lottery tickets that are already known to
Yeah. The ones that weren't even worth putting in your pocket. Just put them on your dash of your car. They sit there in the sun, and 2 weeks later you throw them away like, I don't need that $1.
They're all faded out. Well, so here's the bigger problem in Baltimore. They actually do have some pretty glaring needs that are on the other side of the football. They need to get a dominant pass catcher. They do need to get some help on the O-line. They were pretty badly exposed last season offensively, and they were getting off the field too quickly, and that defense was exhausted half the game. Now, I have Calais Campbell being a guy that's going to get about 47 snaps a game. I think that's about what we can expect from him right now. At his advanced age, I don't know that the productivity that we've traditionally seen is going to still be there. But you want to talk about reliability? He doesn't go anywhere. Just for the sake of comparison, when we talk about, average snaps a game over the course of their career, Calais Campbell, he runs about 44 to 50 snaps a game. That puts him right in line with guys like J.J. Watt, puts him right in line with guys like Carlos Dunlap, puts him right in line with DeForest Buckner. So these are names that, they're younger. Yeah, they're going to have more productivity. But there's no ability like availability, especially in fantasy. Especially when you're talking about the 30th or 40th round of a draft. Yeah, I'm absolutely going to stick him on the end of my bench. And you know what? In a bye week, I'm probably going to play him and he'll give me, depending on the scoring format, 6 to 10, 12, 15 points, whatever it is. And I'm going to be thrilled, and I'm going to put him back on the bench when my other guys are healthy, and it'll be fun. So definitely grab him late. Pick him up off your waiver wire, because I'm sure he's better than whatever other garbage you took in round, 31 or whatever. And,
right. And I agree with the bye week thing. You can't overlook this dude. Not yet. Not until he falls off the map. But I'm a matchup guy. So if I'm sitting there and the matchup's right on me when I'm doing my start sit charts for our members, I'm putting them in there if the matchup's right. Besides just bye week, I still expect personally that we're going to see some upper DL2 numbers out of this guy. I think. I don't think that bringing in Yankee last year did him any good. Campbell was also hurt. So, I think he was banged up over the season. So hopefully he comes in healthy. If you guys want to add any more, we are over an hour. And we oh no, I love it. I love it. I just know James has things to get to. You got things to get to. I'm sure everybody out there is like, man, these guys have been talking for an hour. Right. So if you guys don't have anything else to add, I just want to remind everybody, go to our YouTube channel at Gridiron Ratings Fantasy Football. Hit the subscribe button for us. There's going to be a lot more than just getting defensive popping up there. Jeff's got big plans. We'll talk about those maybe next time he comes on. We've got big plans when it comes to our social network. We're getting ready to expand. Go follow James, Roxanne. I appreciate it. Jeff, just hit everything, folks, because we're going to burn it up this summer. I'm out of here.
Have a good weekend. Thank you for joining me. And Gary, go ahead, Jeff.
Leave us some comments. Tell us how dumb we are.
Yeah, please. I want to know how low my intelligence is.
And we're out of here.
Have a good weekend, everybody.